My name is Catherine Vance, and I am 70 years old. For the last 68 of those years, I've called the city of Portland, Oregon my home. But as I dried my tears with a crumpled handkerchief at the wake of my only son, Benjamin, I felt more lost and homeless than I ever had in my entire life. The scent of lilies was suffocating. The low, respectful murmur of friends and family was a dull hum in my ears. I sat in the front row of the funeral home, my hand clutching my grandson Leo's. He was only 10. His small, warm hand in mine was the only thing tethering me to this nightmare. My Benjamin, my vibrant 43-year-old boy, was gone. A sudden heart attack, they said. It made no sense. As the last of the mourners filed out, offering limp handshakes and hollow condolences, I felt a presence beside me. It was my daughter-in-law, Celia. She was impeccably dressed in a severe black sheath dress, her blonde hair a perfect helmet. There was no trace of tears on her composed face, only a cold, calculating stillness in her blue eyes. She waited until we were nearly alone, save for my brother Arthur, who was gathering his coat a few paces away. "Catherine," she said, her voice a low, sharp blade in the quiet room. "We need to be practical. Now that Ben is gone, things have to change. I need you to be out of the house by tomorrow. I've already accepted an offer, and Leo and I are moving to Austin to be closer to my family." The air left my lungs. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "Celia, we just buried my son. Our Benjamin. How can you even think of the house right now? And where am I to go?" Her gaze was impenetrable like polished stone. "That's not really my concern, is it? The house is in my name. You must have saved something, living with us all these years for free." Free. The word cracked in my throat. "I gave you $200,000 for the down payment on that house, not to mention cooking your meals, cleaning your laundry, raising my grandson." She cut me off with a dismissive wave of her hand. "A gift to your son, not to me. And now he's gone." Before I could form another word, she turned and walked away, joining her brother, David, who shot me a smug, triumphant look from across the room. I sank back into the chair, my hands trembling so violently I had to clasp them together. The cruelty of it was a physical blow. This was the woman my son had loved, the woman I had welcomed as a daughter. That night, in the room I had occupied for 6 years, sleep was impossible. The silence was deafening, broken only by the echo of Celia's cold words. As I numbly packed my belongings into suitcases, the memories I had ignored came rushing back. Celia hiding bank statements, hushed phone conversations that stopped when I entered the room, the way Benjamin had seemed increasingly stressed and withdrawn in his final months. I was pulling a winter sweater from the back of the closet when my fingers brushed against a small metal box. A jolt of memory shot through me. Benjamin had given it to me about 4 months ago. "Keep this safe for me, Mom," he'd said, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Don't tell a soul you have it. Not even Celia. It might be important one day." At the time, I thought it was just a sentimental gesture, perhaps some family jewelry he wanted to keep secure. Now, with trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. Inside was a single tarnished key attached to a small numbered tag. Safety Deposit Box 312. A business card was tucked beside it for a lawyer named Robert Walsh. Scrawled on the back in Benjamin's familiar handwriting was a note. "If anything happens to me, go to Robert immediately. The password is Bluebell, your favorite flower." A chill, cold and sharp, traced a path down my spine. Did Benjamin know? Had he suspected that his life or my security was in danger? The next morning, Celia was as good as her word. At 7 a.m. sharp, she rapped on my bedroom door. "The movers will be here at 1 to start packing the main rooms," she announced, not even bothering with a greeting. "I need your things and you gone by noon." I stood my ground, a new unfamiliar steel in my spine. "Celia, I contributed a small fortune to this house. I have nowhere to go." She sighed, a theatrical sound of immense inconvenience. "There are senior centers, Eleanor. Or perhaps Arthur can take you in. You should have planned for your retirement instead of clinging to my husband." "My son," I corrected, a hot flare of anger cutting through my grief. And that house is as much mine as it is yours. A smug, vicious little smile played on her lips. Prove it. Is your name on the deed? On any legal document? No. Then you have until noon. I didn't argue further. I finished packing my car with my 4 suitcases and a few boxes of photos, snapshots of a life that had been ruthlessly dismantled. As I loaded the last box, I heard Celia on the phone in the kitchen. Finally getting rid of the old baggage, she laughed, a cruel tinkling sound. With the life insurance and the sale of the house, I'll be set for life. She actually thought she was family. Her words didn't cut me this time. They fueled me. I got into my old sedan, the one Benjamin had helped me buy, and drove away from the only home I'd known for the past 6 years. I didn't look back. My first stop was the First National Bank downtown. The bank was a grand, old building, all marble and brass. I felt small and out of place, a 70-year-old woman with red-rimmed eyes and a heart full of lead. But I walked up to the teller and presented the key. I need to access box 312, please. After verifying my identity, I was led to the vault. The click of the key turning in the lock was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Inside the long metal drawer was a simple black binder and a thick, sealed envelope. I took them to a private viewing room. My hand shook as I broke the seal on the envelope. Inside was a letter in Benjamin's hand. My dearest Mom, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have been realized. I'm so sorry to have put you in this position. Over the last several months, I've grown to suspect that Celia's intentions are not what they seem. I found emails between her and David discussing plans to remove the dead weight. That's you, Mom. And sell the house as soon as possible. I also discovered she has been siphoning money from our joint accounts. I should have confronted her, but I wanted irrefutable proof, and I needed to protect you. In the black binder, you will find a notarized contract acknowledging your financial contribution to our home and guaranteeing your right to live there for the rest of your life. There are also bank statements proving the transfer. I've also included a copy of my new will, which leaves my half of the house and 50% of all my assets, including my life insurance, to you. The other half is in a trust for Leo, accessible when he turns 25. Please go see Robert Walsh. He is a good friend and a brilliant lawyer. He has all the original documents and knows what to do. I love you more than words can say. You've always been my rock. Now let me be yours. All my love. Benjamin. Tears streamed down my face, splashing onto the paper. They were not just tears of grief but of awe. My son, my brilliant, thoughtful boy, had been protecting me from beyond the grave. I opened the black binder. It was all there, just as he'd said. The contract, the bank records, the new will, all meticulously organized and notarized. Celia had no idea what was coming. I left the bank a different woman. I drove straight to the address on Robert Walsh's business card. His office was warm and inviting, lined with books. Robert himself was a man in his late 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Eleanor, he said, his voice gentle. Ben was more than a client. He was like a brother to me. He came to me 3 months ago deeply troubled. He believed Celia and David were planning to displace you after his death. He never imagined it would be so soon. He knew, I whispered, the reality of it settling deep in my soul. He knew something was going to happen to him. Robert's expression was grim. He had his suspicions. He'd been feeling unwell, dizzy spells, nausea. He found a prescription bottle in David's car for a drug that, in high doses, can cause cardiac arrhythmia. He was quietly building a case. My blood ran cold. Are you saying they killed my son? I'm saying we have enough for the police to open an investigation, he replied carefully. But first, let's get your home back. Robert worked quickly. He sent a cease and desist letter to Celia, citing the legal documents and demanding my immediate reinstatement to the property. He also filed an injunction to freeze the sale of the house. 3 days later, we arranged a meeting at Robert's office. Celia was summoned under the pretense of discussing estate matters. She had no idea I would be there. I arrived early. Robert had me wait in an adjoining room where I could hear everything. At precisely 10 a.m., I heard Celia's voice, sharp and confident, followed by the deeper, arrogant tone of her brother David. "Mr. Walsh," Celia began, "to what do we owe this meeting? I was under the impression the estate was straightforward." "Actually, Mrs. Vance, it's quite complex," Robert replied. "Benjamin executed a new will and several ancillary documents recently, and he specifically requested that his mother be present for any discussions. That was my cue. I opened the door and walked in. Celia's face was a masterpiece of shock and fury. "Eleanor, what is the meaning of this?" "Mrs. Vance is here because, according to Benjamin's new will, she is the co-owner of your house and the beneficiary of half his estate," Robert stated calmly, sliding the documents across the polished mahogany table. Celia snatched the papers, her eyes scanning them rapidly. The color drained from her face. "This is a forgery. He would never do this." "It's all perfectly legal and notarized," Robert said. "And there's more." He pressed play on a small recorder on his desk. Benjamin's voice, strong and clear, filled the room. "This is Benjamin Vance, recording this on September 12th to affirm that I am of sound mind and am executing a new will of my own free will. I am specifically guaranteeing my mother, Catherine Vance, lifetime residency rights at 1847 Maple Drive, in recognition of her generous financial contribution. This is my wish, without coercion from anyone." The recording stopped. The silence in the room was absolute. "You can't do this," David snarled, leaning across the table. "We already have," I said, my voice steady. I looked directly at Celia. "You thought you could discard me like yesterday's news. You thought I was just a helpless old woman. But you underestimated my son, and you underestimated me." Robert then presented the evidence Benjamin had gathered: the emails, the bank transfers, the photos of the prescription bottle. "We will be taking this to the authorities," he said. "But we are prepared to offer you a choice. You can agree to the terms of the will. Catherine moves back in with full rights, the house is not sold, and we keep this evidence private for now. Or we can contest this in open court, and I will personally ensure the district attorney sees every single one of these documents." Celia looked from Robert to me. Her mask of composure completely shattered. She was cornered and she knew it. The life of luxury she had planned was evaporating before her eyes. We accept the terms," she whispered, her voice choked with defeat. As I signed the documents that reinstated me in my own home, I felt Benjamin's presence beside me. He had given me back my power. But I knew, as I looked at Celia's venomous glare, that the war was far from over. The battle for the house was won, but the truth about my son's death was a storm still on the horizon. Now, if you were moved by Eleanor's strength, click subscribe to the Golden Years Tales channel. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening to this? Tell me in the comments. Your stories reach farther than you know. And if you want to hear what happens next, when the police get involved and little Leo's future hangs in the balance, become a member for exclusive content. I'll be waiting for you there. Walking back into 1847, Maple Drive was like stepping into a ghost of my own life. The house felt different, colder, despite the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. Some of Celia's more garish art pieces were already packed away, leaving pale, empty rectangles on the walls. Celia stood in the living room, her arms crossed tightly. She looked like a stranger in what was once our shared home. "Your room is as you left it," she said, her voice clipped and devoid of emotion. "No," I replied, my voice firm. "I'll be taking the master bedroom." Her head snapped up, eyes flashing. "That's my room." "It was Benjamin's room too," I said, meeting her gaze without flinching. "And according to the legal agreement I just signed, I have equal right to it. You can have the guest room or we can draw up a schedule. The choice is yours." Before she could retort, the front door burst open and a small tornado of energy flew into my arms. "Grandma, you're back. Mom said you had to go away forever." Leo sobbed into my sweater, his small body trembling. I held him tight, my eyes locked with Celia's over his head. She had the decency to look away, a flicker of shame crossing her features. "I'm back, my darling boy. I whispered into his hair. And I'm not going anywhere. That first night was a tense, silent affair. I cooked dinner. A simple pasta dish that had been Benjamin's favorite. The three of us sat at the dining table, the only sound the clinking of cutlery. Leo tried valiantly to fill the silence with chatter about his video game, but the weight of the unspoken truths was suffocating. Later, as I was washing the dishes, Celia approached. "We need ground rules," she stated. "We do," I agreed, drying my hands. Rule 1. No more lies. Rule 2. Leo's well-being is our only priority. Rule 3. You will treat me with respect in my own home. She gave a tight, reluctant nod. Fine. I also want defined spaces and times. We stay out of each other's way. Agreed, I said. And Leo will have guaranteed, uninterrupted time with each of us. A strange, almost wounded look passed over her face before she masked it. I did love him, you know, she said softly, almost to herself. In my own way. I didn't answer. Some wounds were still too fresh, too deep. I simply turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the ghosts of the family we used to be. A week after my return, Robert Walsh called. His voice was grave. Eleanor, I've heard from the police. Benjamin's autopsy report has been reviewed. The official cause is still cardiac arrest, but they found elevated, borderline toxic levels of digoxin in his system. It's a heart medication, but in the wrong dosage. It can be fatal. I finished, my blood running cold. The prescription bottle Benjamin had found in David's car. Precisely, Robert said. They're opening a formal investigation. They'll be contacting you and Celia for interviews. The next day, I noticed Celia in the backyard on her phone. Her voice was a low, frantic whisper. When she saw me watching from the kitchen window, she abruptly ended the call and came inside. A forced, casual smile plastered on her face. Eleanor, I've been thinking, she said. Maybe we should sell the house. Split the money. All this tension can't be good for Leo. We could both make a fresh start. I studied her carefully. She was nervous. The investigation was closing in. No, Celia. We are not selling. Benjamin wanted Leo to grow up in this house, and that is what is going to happen. Her smile tightened, a brittle thing that didn't reach her eyes. Of course. It was just a thought. That afternoon, Detective Maria Flores arrived at our door. She was a compact woman with intelligent, observant eyes. We spoke in the living room while Celia took Leo to the park, shooting me a venomous look on her way out. Mrs. Vance, Detective Flores began, we're looking into some irregularities surrounding your son's passing. Did you notice any changes in his health or behavior in the months before he died? I told her about the dizziness, the fatigue, the unexplained nausea. I told her about his growing suspicion, the secret safety deposit box, the lawyer. I gave her everything, my voice shaking only once, when I mentioned the digoxin. And your daughter-in-law? The detective asked gently. What was their relationship like? On the surface it was fine, I said carefully. But Benjamin had discovered she was moving money. He was quietly building a case against her. The detective nodded, taking notes. We are aware of the financial transfers. We also know that Celia increased Benjamin's life insurance policy significantly 6 months ago, without his apparent knowledge. And we're investigating a connection between David and a doctor who recently had his license revoked for improper prescriptions. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying finality. It wasn't just neglect, it was premeditated. My son was murdered. 2 days later, a sense of impending doom hung over the house. Celia was jumpy, packing a single suitcase with frantic, hurried movements. I pretended not to notice, my heart hammering against my ribs. I called Robert and Detective Flores, informing them of her behavior. My worst fear was realized when the phone rang. It was Leo's school. Mrs. Vance? Celia just picked up Leo. She said there was a family emergency. My blood turned to ice. When? About 15 minutes ago. I immediately called Detective Flores. She's taken Leo. She's running. What followed was a blur of sirens and urgency. Search warrants were executed at the house. Police found Celia's passport, but her car and Leo were gone. All exits from the city were monitored. I spent the most agonizing night of my life, paralyzed with fear for my grandson. At 5:17 the next morning, my cell phone rang. An unknown number. Grandma. Leo's small, scared voice was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Leo. Where are you, sweetheart? Are you okay? We're at a motel. The Starlight Inn. Mom's crying. She said we had to hide from bad people. Before I could respond, I heard a scuffle in Celia's voice, sharp with panic. Who are you calling? The line went dead. I immediately relayed the information to Detective Flores. Within minutes, a tactical team had the motel surrounded. I stood with the detective a block away, my hands clenched into fists, praying for Leo's safety. I watched as Celia emerged, holding Leo's hand. She looked defeated, her shoulders slumped, all the fight gone out of her. Officers carefully led her away while a social worker brought a wide-eyed Leo to me. He ran into my arms, and I held him as if I would never let go. Grandma, is Mom in trouble? He whispered into my neck. It's a very complicated situation, my love, I said, my voice thick with tears. But you are safe. That's all that matters now. Celia, faced with overwhelming evidence and cut off from her brother, who had been arrested trying to board a flight to Mexico, broke down. She agreed to a plea deal in exchange for testifying against David. In her official statement, she claimed the plan was all David's. He had connected her with the disgraced doctor. The digoxin was meant to be administered in small, cumulative doses to mimic a progressive heart condition. She admitted to knowing about it, to adding the powder to his evening coffee, but she insisted she never wanted him to die, just to be sick enough to need her constant care, to stop him from digging into their finances. She said she loved him. She said she was scared of David. She said a lot of things. I read the transcript in Robert's office, feeling physically ill. The cold, calculated nature of it was beyond my comprehension. They had stolen my son from me dose by dose over months. David Davis was charged with first-degree murder. Celia, thanks to her cooperation, was charged with manslaughter and conspiracy. The legal proceedings were a long, painful marathon. I became Leo's permanent legal guardian. At 68, I was suddenly a mother again, helping with 5th grade math, navigating parent-teacher conferences, and learning the rules of Minecraft. It was exhausting and wonderful. We fell into a new rhythm, Leo and I. We planted a memorial garden in the backyard, a cherry tree because Benjamin loved them, and a bench where we could sit and talk. The nightmares he had in the beginning slowly became less frequent. One afternoon, while we were weeding the garden, Leo looked up at me, his face serious. Grandma, he asked, do you think Mom is a monster? I put down my trowel and looked at my grandson, his innocent eyes searching for an answer I wasn't sure I had. I think your mother made monstrous choices, Leo. But people are complicated. She did a terrible, unforgivable thing. But she is also the person who read you bedtime stories and kissed your scraped knees. You are allowed to miss that person and be angry at the other one. Both of those feelings can be true at the same time. He nodded slowly, absorbing this. I think I understand, he said, and went back to pulling weeds, a little boy carrying a weight no child should ever have to bear. On the advice of Leo's therapist, I joined a support group for grandparents raising grandchildren. It was there I met Walter, a spry 72-year-old with a kind smile and eyes that had seen their own share of loss. He was raising his 14-year-old granddaughter, Chloe, after his daughter lost her battle with addiction. Over bad coffee in the church basement, we found solace in shared experiences. We started meeting for coffee outside the group, sometimes with the kids, sometimes without. It was never romantic, not at first. It was a companionship built on mutual understanding, a safe harbor in the storm of our lives. One day, as we watched Leo and Chloe chase Walter's dog in the park, he turned to me. You know, Eleanor, I was thinking the Portland Art Museum has a new exhibit. The kids might enjoy it. Maybe we could all go this Saturday. I looked at his hopeful face and felt a warmth that had been absent from my life for a very long time. I think that would be lovely, Walter, I said. I think that would be just fine. The trial of David Davis was a media circus. He was portrayed as the mastermind, the ruthless brother who corrupted his sister for financial gain. Celia, pale and hollow-eyed, testified against him, her voice a monotone as she detailed their plot. I testified about Benjamin's final months, his symptoms, his suspicions. I held up under the defense attorney's brutal cross-examination, where he painted me as a bitter, interfering mother-in-law. I spoke not with anger, but with a simple, devastating truth. The jury was out for less than a day. Guilty on all counts. David Davis was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Celia received a sentence of 12 to 20 years. When the judge read the verdict, I felt no triumph. Only a profound, echoing emptiness. Justice had been served, but my son was still gone. The world kept turning, but a part of mine had stopped forever. 3 years passed. Leo was 13, all long limbs and a deepening voice. The cherry tree in the backyard was thriving. Walter and I had grown closer, a steady, comforting presence in each other's lives. We never married, but we were partners in every sense that mattered. One Tuesday, the mail brought a letter with a familiar return address. The Oregon State Correctional Institution. It was from Celia. Eleanor, I don't expect a response, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I write today not to ask for it, but to thank you. Thank you for giving Leo the stable, loving home I shattered. Thank you for the photos you send at Christmas. Thank you for never poisoning him against me, even when it would have been justified. Leo writes to me. He tells me about school, about baseball, about you and Walter. He sounds happy, whole. And for that I am eternally grateful to you. I have refused my first parole hearing. I will serve my full 12-year minimum. It is the only penance I can offer. When I am released, I will not disrupt the life you have built. Leo will be a young man and he can decide what role, if any, I will play in his life. I will respect his decision completely. Benjamin was right to protect you. He saw the strength in you that I was too blind and selfish to see. I was not worthy of either of you. With respect, Celia. I read the letter 3 times, sitting at the kitchen table as the morning light streamed in. I felt a confusing mix of sorrow, anger, and a strange, reluctant pity. I showed it to Walter. Are you going to write back? He asked gently. I thought for a long time. I don't know, I said. And for the moment that was answer enough. Leo at 15 was the spitting image of his father. It was sometimes jarring, seeing Benjamin smile and hearing his laugh come from this young man. One evening, he found me in the memorial garden. Grandma, he said, sitting beside me on the bench, I've decided what I want to do. I want to be a lawyer. Like Mr. Walsh. I want to help families like ours. My heart swelled with a pride so immense it brought tears to my eyes. Your father, I said, my voice cracking, would be so incredibly proud of you. You think so? I know so. He was quiet for a moment, looking at the cherry tree. I got a letter from Mom. She said the same thing. She said it's a good way to turn pain into purpose. He looked at me, his young old eyes full of a hard-won understanding. Thank you, Grandma, for never making me choose, for letting me have my own complicated feelings. I reached out and squeezed his hand. That's what family is for, Leo. We weather the complicated things together. On the 10th anniversary of Benjamin's death, we held a small gathering in the garden. The cherry tree was in full glorious bloom. Leo, now a young man of 20, stood to speak. He didn't have a paper. He spoke from the heart. Dad, he began, his voice clear and strong. It's been 10 years. I'm in college now studying pre-law. I think about you every day. I miss your advice, and I really miss having someone who understood baseball stats. A soft chuckle went through our small group. But I feel you with me. In this garden, in this house, in the values Grandma taught me. You taught me to be vigilant, to protect the people I love. And you taught me, in the most painful way possible, that love doesn't die with a person. It becomes your compass. As he spoke, I looked around at our patchwork family. Walter, his hand resting comfortingly on my shoulder. Chloe, now a vibrant young woman. Robert Walsh, our steadfast friend. And Leo, my grandson, my son's living legacy, standing tall and strong. The life we had built was not the one we planned. It was a mosaic pieced together from broken shards, loss, betrayal, grief, but also resilience, rediscovered love, and an unbreakable bond between a grandmother and her grandson. Benjamin's final act of love, that tarnished key, had not just saved my home. It had set us on a path to save each other. The pain of his loss would always be a part of me, a quiet ache in my soul. But it was no longer the only thing defining me. I was Catherine Vance, 70 years old, a survivor, a guardian, a partner, and a grandmother. And my story, like the cherry tree in my garden, was still blooming. Leo's acceptance to law school on the East Coast was a tide of conflicting emotions. Pride so immense it felt like my heart would burst, warred with a deep, aching sense of impending loss. The house at 1847 Maple Drive, which had once felt too small for 3 adults, now felt cavernous at the prospect of being empty. We spent the summer before his departure in a whirlwind of shopping for dorm supplies and memorizing the feel of his presence. Walter, ever practical and kind, built a custom trunk for him, while I secretly stitched a small sturdy quilt, something to hold the warmth of home in a cold new place. The day we drove him to the airport was a quiet one. Leo, usually so articulate, was rendered silent, his throat working as he looked out the window at his receding city. At the departure's curb, he hugged Walter first, a firm, manly clasp. Then he turned to me. His embrace was the same as when he was 10, fierce, wholehearted, and desperately needed. "I'll call every Sunday," he whispered into my hair. "You focus on your studies," I managed, my voice thick. "Be brilliant. Be happy. That's all I ask." He nodded, his eyes glistening, then hefted his backpack and walked through the automatic doors without looking back. It was the right thing to do, but it carved a fresh hollow in my chest. That first night, the silence was a physical presence. Walter held my hand on the porch as we watched the cherry tree's leaves rustle in the twilight. "He's exactly where he's meant to be, Eleanor," he said softly. "You gave him the roots to grow and the wings to fly. That's the greatest success a parent can have." I knew he was right. But knowing and feeling in the quiet of an empty house are two very different things. 2 years into Leo's studies, a formal cream-colored envelope arrived. The return address was a law firm in Boston. Inside was a letter from the dean, inviting me to an awards ceremony. Leo was to receive the Benjamin Vance Memorial Scholarship for Ethical Jurisprudence, a scholarship he and Robert Walsh had quietly established with a portion of Benjamin's estate. He hadn't told me. The surprise was a balm on the lingering ache of his absence. Walter and I booked our flights, the first time I'd left Portland in a decade. The ceremony was held in a wood-paneled hall that smelled of old books and ambition. Seeing Leo on that stage in a sharp suit, accepting the award named for his father, was a moment of such profound closure it stole my breath. He spoke not of loss but of legacy. He spoke of justice not as an abstract concept, but as a shield for the vulnerable, a principle his father had died defending. Afterwards, he introduced us to his girlfriend, Isabel, a whip-smart history major with kind eyes. Seeing the way he looked at her, with a mixture of admiration and tenderness, I felt the final piece of my heart settle. My boy was not just surviving, he was building a beautiful life. The call from the prison came on a rainy Tuesday. Celia was unwell. A non-life-threatening but chronic illness required ongoing treatment, and she was being considered for a medical transfer to a lower-security facility. As part of the review process, she had requested a meeting with me. My first instinct was a firm, resounding no. Walter and Robert both advised against it. But something nagged at me. A sense of unfinished business, not for her but for myself. I went alone. She looked smaller, faded. The sharp, beautiful angles of her face had softened with time and poor health. We sat in a visitation room, a scarred table between us. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice raspy. "I'm not sure why I did," I replied honestly. She looked down at her hands, twisted together on the table. "I heard about Leo. The scholarship. I'm glad." She took a shaky breath. "I've been in therapy. For years now. They make you look at things. Really look." I remained silent, letting her find the words. I told you I loved Benjamin in my own way, she began, her eyes fixed on a point past my shoulder. The therapy made me see that my way was possessive. It was about what he could give me. Status, security, a picture-perfect life. When he started to see through that, I felt exposed. And when David offered a solution, I was too weak, too terrified of losing it all to say no. She finally met my gaze, her eyes clear and full of a weary regret. I didn't come here for forgiveness, Eleanor. I came to say out loud to you that it was never his fault. He was a good man. And I failed him. I failed everyone. It wasn't an apology that could change the past. But it was the truth, stark and unvarnished. And in a strange way, it was the final brick laid in the wall of my own healing. I had needed to see the totality of her remorse to truly let my own anger go. I stood to leave. I hope you find some peace, Celia, I said. And I meant it. Walter and I were married in our garden, under the blooming cherry tree. It was a small, simple affair. Leo was his best man. Chloe was my maid of honor. Robert Walsh officiated. We exchanged vows we wrote ourselves, promises not of passion, but of partnership, of showing up, of shared cups of tea on quiet mornings. We sold my house and his, and bought a single-story cottage with a bigger garden and no stairs to worry about in our advancing years. It was a new chapter, a comfortable, gentle one. And then 5 years later came the call that reshaped our world once more. Leo's voice was choked with a joy I hadn't heard since he was a child. Grandma Walter. It's a boy. Benjamin Walter. Your great-grandparents. The circle was complete. The name was a blessing, a passing of the torch. The pain of the first Benjamin's loss was now inextricably woven with the incalculable joy of this new one's arrival. I am 85 years old. My hands are gnarled with arthritis, and my steps are slower. But my heart is full. Today I sit on the porch of our cottage, a soft, hand-knitted blanket over my knees. In my arms is little Ben, just 6 months old, with a thatch of dark hair and his great-grandfather's serious blue eyes. He gurgles, clutching my finger with a surprisingly strong grip. Leo and Isabel are in the garden, laughing as they try to string up fairy lights for a family dinner. Walter is beside me, his head nodding in a gentle afternoon doze. I look down at the baby, at this new life that carries the name of my son. The memory of Benjamin is no longer a sharp stabbing pain. It is a soft, enduring presence, like the scent of cherry blossoms on the spring air. He would have loved this. He would have loved seeing his son become a father, seeing his mother find peace. The story that began with a cold voice at a wake, a tarnished key, and a terrible betrayal has ended here. Not with a dramatic finale, but with this quiet, perfect moment. It ended with resilience, with love rediscovered and love renewed, and with the unwavering knowledge that even in the deepest winter, a blossom can always find a way to bloom. I lean my head back, close my eyes and smile. It was a long road, but oh, it was worth the journey.